You always knew when Ryan was here. I used to say it was like a freight train coming through the house because his presence was just everywhere. I think about the times that, him sitting at the breakfast bar, telling jokes, and sometimes they were inappropriate, and, but that's how he would try and get a rise out of you.
Lori Lewis has known the role of wife, mother, and nurse well. But these days, she finds herself in a very different position, one she never imagined.
Please welcome Lori Lewis as she comes forward.
She's reaching out publicly to discuss the dangers of heroin, but it's what happened in her home where this new and heartbreaking chapter began. Her oldest son, Ryan, battled a heroin addiction for several years, a battle he ultimately lost.
He told me that Ryan had overdosed, and for me, I just thought, okay, well, that's happened twice before that I know of, so what does that mean, and then he told me he had died. And at that point, it's just, you want so bad to be back a minute before, and, it was just hard to hear. I was in shock, because there was no more helping.
And Lori struggled to help Ryan when she first learned he was using heroin. After several overdoses and several stays in treatment facilities, he died just days after entering a sober house.
I'm sure he just thought he could use one more time. That's what he would tell us before is, I want to quit. I want to try and get through this and have a life of recovery, but it's so hard. And I'm sure he thought he could do it just one more time. So our lives are not the same. It's a struggle every single day, and that's why we're talking about it and being very open, is because we don't want any other family to have to go through this.
As part of a community partnership, Lori has teamed up with law enforcement to bring awareness to the dangers of addiction.
He then told me that my son was dead. He died that morning of a heroin overdose.
With drug abuse spiking in the past several years, the forums are designed with a specific message. Addiction can happen to anyone.
A lot of people are just unwilling to say, they're saying my child's an honor student, my child's involved in sports and activities, and as a parent I can understand that and say that's what you want for your child, is to be involved in other activities, and you hope that they stay away from some of the dangers that we'll talk about today. What we're seeing is that just isn't the case.
I just have always been genetically predisposed to addiction.
The increase in heroin use in large part stems from prescription drugs, whether prescribed, purchased, or stolen. According to the Ramsey County Medical Examiner, opiate-related overdose deaths increased in 2014 from 37 to 42. But when the pills run out and the money to get them, abusers find heroin is a much cheaper alternative. At least 11 of these deaths involved heroin, and in Washington County, heroin deaths increased from 1 to 4 in 2014.
Then the next logical thing is to jump over to heroin. And that is a jump because now you're going from, popping a pill, and there's that stigma that goes with it, to either snorting something or eventually shooting it. But once you take that first shot in there, that high, people have described it to me as being so much better than popping the pills that you just instantly, it's there. And it's cheap now and it's pure.
School resource officers John Somweber and Isaac Tuma say historically pot is the most frequently abused illegal substance among teens.
They always start out talking about it as marijuana. Why? Because it is the most frequently used illicit drug in the world.
Somweber says 4 years ago, students may have heard of heroin, but likely never saw it or knew someone using. But times have changed. The increase of H on the street may be a direct link to the shift.
We've seen a very drastic increase in the number of heroin incidents that, as a police department, would respond to. Where when I started as a police officer in 2003, we would maybe have 1, 2, or 3 heroin-related incidents in a year. In the time that's expanded since then to now, I'd say that we maybe have 2 or 3 heroin-type incidents a month.
Yeah, growing up. I mean, I kind of had a rough childhood.
Corey Clementson is sober and has been for over 4 years, but it took decades of addiction to bring about change.
I remember the movie Drugstore Cowboys came out when I was 12. And I saw Matt Dillon shooting Dilaudid in the back seat of the car, and I knew then. You know, they have the DARE program or whatever says, yeah, nobody ever says they're going to be a junkie when they grow up or whatever. And I knew then that I was going to be walking down that road, you know.
Corey's evolutionary journey into drugs began with alcohol as a child, and when he started using heroin, he often used alcohol and other narcotics simultaneously, causing him to overdose multiple times.
The actual experience of overdosing it's nil. It's a blackout. So there's no.
You don't remember.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You hit a blackout period, and then a knockout period, and then respiratory depression, and of course, if you do enough, you skip the first 2 steps and you go right to the other.
Officials say what makes heroin so deadly is failing to realize its potency, and in overdose cases, using the wrong amount.
It's something your body builds a tolerance to. So day 1, maybe you use 1 ml, for example, which is 1/5 of a teaspoon. By the time that you're a month or 3 months into it, you're gonna need enough 5 or 10 mLs to go ahead and get that same feeling. And so somebody who's using it and says, here, I'll share it with you, they're already tolerant. And if they give it to somebody who's what we call opiate naive or has not used to having those types of drugs and not developed tolerance, that dose can kill them.
Survivors, those left behind after a fatal overdose, often wonder what they could or should have done differently, questions Lori Lewis asks herself every day.
Holidays and family get-togethers are very, very hard.
Ryan would have been 24 this past March, and though Lori has made her family's story very public, they endure a very private struggle.
His sister asked if she could have that, and she wants to learn how to play guitar too.
She hopes by helping other families avoid her painful reality, she may begin a new chapter of healing, hope, and change.
I think about him every minute of every day, and that's hard too because I'm so consumed with it.